What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be working on the 93 Ranger build. In this video we're going to be working on the single swing steering that I'm going to be creating from scratch for this truck. But before that, I've gotten a lot done since the last video, so I feel like I got to get you guys caught up. Clearly a lot's been done since the last video. I think the last thing that I had done was these frame plates and then messing around with getting the beam pivots put onto the frame. So obviously a lot's been done since then. Just going through it, I have gotten the engine cage built. I had to get the beams and radius arms on the truck, which are off right now because I finally got everything painted in Steelit. But the beams have the shock mounts on them already. All the, let's see, you can't see them, but there's tabs on the radius arms for brake lines, and then there's also the bump stop pads on there that are all burned up. But I had everything under here, cycled everything, made these shock mounts, got all the angles correct, at least as good as I could, because we are still utilizing AC and heat. Then after I got these shock mounts done, I came in, got the bump stops tacked up into place exactly where they needed to be, and then came back in, did the overlay plates on each side. Just got in there, TIG welded some of it, MIG welded it onto the truck itself, and then we also got it strapped out. So the hard part of the front of this truck is finished. I did not film any of this, unfortunately, just because I wanted to get it done. Just as a side note though, because I know people are gonna ask, so this truck right now, bumped and strapped, is cycling 16.5 inches of travel. Probably could have got a little bit more metal to metal, which means without the limit strap and without the bump stop in there, kind of taking away and helping, this truck is pulling roughly 18 inches of travel, but you do not want to cycle the entire length of the shock because you risk damaging the shock if it's fully extending, and then also if it's fully compressing. If it's fully compressing and slamming into itself, it is not good. So that is the reason for a bump stop, and that is the reason for a limit strap. The bump stop, it comes up, and this will physically stop before the shock completely bottoms out, and then the limit strap is there for the truck to completely droop out, but not droop out far enough to let the shock itself completely droop out. So that's why you see these trucks with a limit strap and a bump stop, because they're both extremely useful. You definitely need them if you're going to be driving the truck hard, because you will ruin your very expensive shocks that you're putting on the truck. So that's definitely necessary. I also did a Bolton removable crossmember over the motor. That way, if he needs to pull the intake or do anything working on the motor, 4 bolts, super simple, pull that out, and you can work on anything without having a tube in your way. So that should make things a little bit easier for him. But now with all that out of the way, we can get to what this video is actually about. I'm gonna be working on getting the single swing steering built for this truck. It's gonna be a one-off custom kit. Going off of how I did this truck, I'm gonna go ahead and try and build my own on this one. I do think it's gonna be pretty simple. I have some templates cut out already. I need to go ahead and cut these out, but this is gonna be the main part of the swinger right here. Some 2-inch 250 wall tubing. And then I also have these bronze bushings that I had Ryan Jubera make for me. I don't know if you guys noticed already, but I do have the Pitman Arm already made. This is actually a 4-inch drop Pitman Arm for a Ranger, F-150, Bronco, F-100. They fit on the Ranger gearboxes, and then I just made the double shear plates to capture these 2 heims right here that are gonna go in this Pitman Arm. So I'm kind of just connecting the dots. I have the Pitman Arm made already. I'm gonna be making the swinger right now. That's gonna go on the inside of the frame right there, and then once the hanger is sitting there and the swinger's sitting there, I can start connecting the dots from the Pitman Arm to the swinger, and then from the swinger down to the tie rod over here, and then down to the wheel on that side as well once the beams are back under the truck. But for now, I need to get started on making this swinger, so let's get started with that. Day one on steering is pretty much over. I did get the swinger all tacked together like you just saw. I also got the 2 tabs that actually mount the swinger to the inside of the frame rails. I got those actually made as well off camera, but I'll show you guys how far I got right now. So there you can see tab number 1 right here. Tab number 2 is on that side. We got everything up in here, just ready to get cycled. I need to start making the tie rods. That'll be the next point, off of here, going to the Pitman arm right here, and then also to obviously the tie rods once I get the beams, or to the spindles, sorry, once I get the beams and radius arms back on the truck. But as you can see, I got this lower pivot point right here. This heim is actually gonna go to, this is the main tie rod for the driver's side. So this pivot point right here, this bolt, you want to line up with your beam pivot. What I used was just some simple all thread. I stuck it through both of them, tacked it up into place, and then obviously now everything's directly in line. So that's a good starting point to start cycling everything from. You can make all your tie rods and then cycle from bump to droop and see how much your camber, or not your camber, but your toe actually changes from bump to droop. So we'll do that. That'll be coming up, but for now, that is tacked in the frame and we can start getting the tie rods made to start connecting the dots. All right guys, so jumping around a little bit, it's currently next day. This morning I did run to Home Depot and get some materials so I can start on the steering. I picked up this 1-inch, it's called electrical metallic tubing. It's literally just electrical conduit. I used this, or at least I used it on the F-150 when I did the steering, just mocking things up. The reason I do that is because the tubing that I use for the tie rods, the actual tubing I use, is pretty expensive. So if I mess that up, it's not very cheap just to replace. So I use this conduit. I think for these 2 10-foot sticks, it was like 20 bucks or something like that. So not too bad. What I'm gonna do is take this electrical conduit and then take the bungs that I have for the heims that I'm gonna be using for the steering, cut this conduit down to the length that I think it's gonna be. And the cool part about this stuff is, compared to like PVC pipe, which is what some people use to do mock-up tie rods, that stuff will flex a lot. The cool part about this electrical conduit is you can actually put bends in it and it will stay. So while you're cycling everything, if you need to put a couple bends in your tie rods, you can use this stuff, put it in the bender real quick, bend it up, it'll stay there. You can cycle everything, it's perfect. So this stuff's super good to use just to mock up tie rods. You can get it in a bunch of different sizes too. So the only issue with this is it is galvanized. So when you're tack welding your bungs to this material, just make sure you're not breathing that stuff, but you should be fine. You're not actually welding it. You're just making mock up tie rods. I also have these spindles out here drying right now. I just put a coat of black paint on these. Since I had the beams and radius arms off the truck already, I figured I'd get these off, take the calipers off of them, wrap the rotors in some plastic bags, and then throw a little bit of paint on the spindles. So every little detail definitely adds up in the end. So stuff like this, 100% worth it. It takes 2 minutes just to prep everything and throw a coat of paint on it. So that's definitely good. Right now I'm gonna go ahead and get the beams and radius arms hung back up underneath the truck so I can get the spindles. Hopefully they'll be dry by the time these are done. right, the truck's back on its own weight. I do need to go back and go through and do a once over on all the hardware just to make sure everything is nice and tight, but the truck is 100% on its own weight, all 4 tires on the ground, which is super exciting. Last night I did get the steering finished up. Obviously you saw I got the shocks on, but I didn't film as much as I wanted to just because it was dark out and I was trying to just get things finished. But let's go over the steering right now and I can kind of show you guys what I did. On this truck I opted to go with the single swing steering setup. On the OBS F-150 that I built, I did a dual swing steering setup on that, but my daily driver OBS has single swing steering on it. Literally the exact same setup that I did on this, and it works perfectly fine. So the only reason this has dual swing steering and the differences between dual and single, so single right here you have one swinger that lines up with your beam pivot to get your tie rod length correct and all the geometry right. With the single swing, you're using your Pitman arm as a pivot point for your tie rod, but with dual swing, you'd have your Pitman arm here as usual, you'd have another swinger right here behind, and then you'd have this swinger as well. So the main focus of doing single swing and dual swing steering is to get your pivot point for your tie rod to line up with the beam pivot. So the beam pivot, you can see the beam right here, it comes up, it's literally right behind this bolt for the steering. As long as you have your pivot points very close to in line with your beam pivots, you should be very close to where you need to be. It did take a little bit of moving around, so it's not directly in line with it, but it's very, very close. So you're gonna have to find the sweet spot. What I did is I came in here on the spindle side, I drilled the ball joint out to 5/8 to accept a 5/8 bolt. So it's running 5/8 bolts on the spindles, 9/16 bolt on the Pitman arm, 9/16 bolt holding the tie rods into the swinger, and then a 3/4 inch bolt that holds the swinger to the frame. So inside of here, it's all boxed in, as you can tell. I boxed the mount in so it's not coming off the frame rail. All this stuff is nice and tight in here. One of the big things when doing steering like this is you're not able to take the truck to an alignment shop anymore, just because when you do the single swing steering or dual swing, whichever one you decide to do, you're gonna end up going to Heim steering, so everything's gonna be on Heims. The issue with that for most alignment shops is if you have any bends in your tie rods at all, you're gonna have to unbolt the tie rod itself and then take the Heim and either unthread it or thread it in a couple turns to start to set the alignment. And most shops don't want to deal with that. So what I've done is I've made my own tool here that you saw me using. For this truck, I used a 35-inch piece of tubing. These are a 33, but I decided to go with a 35 just so I know the toe change isn't crazy. The longer you make this, the more accurate your steering is going to end up being as far as setting toe and all that. So I just went with a 35-inch piece of tubing here. I cut out a little notch right here for one of the studs on the wheel, and then these 2 pieces of tubing right here I cut down, and they actually go over the studs on the rotor, and then lug nuts hold them in. So this piece literally goes nowhere. You know it's stationary on the truck. It can't move, it can't change your alignment settings. And then also what I did on each end, I cut a little slit, and I used those plumb bobs with string to go down to the ground. And then I just snapped some lines parallel to the truck. My dad helped me get some lines snapped to the truck. Those we went off the center of the wheel to center of the wheel in the front, and then we used a level, went up from the back of the tire, made a line, and then did some measurements, figured out exactly how to make it straight, and then I used these lines right here to set the toe on the truck. So you can see dead nuts to the lines. On this Ranger in particular, I ended up going with an 1/8 inch of toe in on each side, which gives you a total of a 1/4 inch of toe in altogether. The reason I do that is because towing in the truck will make it drive straight going down the road, and when you give it that much toe in, you know for sure it's going to drive straight. Most off-road trucks, especially this one right here, this one, and the other trucks I've done steering on, the majority of them aren't driven on the street too much, so having that much toe in won't affect too many things. This truck he will be driving every day, just as I do with this. This truck also has a 1/4 inch of toe in, and it does totally fine. So this thing will be literally the miniature version of my daily driver, which is super rad. I can't wait to see this thing driving. With that being said, I probably am going to end the video here. I do need to go back and do a once over on all the hardware, make sure everything's good to go there. I'm next moving on to the front bumper and getting that completely done. I am going to do a video on that as well. Hopefully that's going to be a little bit more in depth than this video. I was kind of all over the place just trying to get this thing finished. I do have a deadline for this truck, which is March 1st, which is this Saturday. Today is currently Tuesday, so I don't have very much time. I still need to get this front bumper finished and get up all the loose ends wrapped up, get the fenders back on it. We do have bed sides that need to be pulled to fit the new 33-inch tires, so there's still a lot to do before Saturday. So I'm trying my best to film and get things done at the same time. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.